Everything about this EP just screams Gent. Man, this album is so good. It is nuts. This is a beast. I almost expected these guys to be the next big Gent band that was gonna blow up. What's up YouTube, Interiors here, hope you're all doing well. I'm actually gonna try something a little bit different today. Up until now, all of my content has always been centered around my own music, but today I wanted to actually talk about other people's music for the first time. I've been really actively involved in the whole online gent, prog metal, whatever you want to call it, that whole online community. I've been very involved in for almost 10 years now at this point. And throughout that time, I have just subsequently amassed this knowledge of all these underground, super, what I would consider underrated gent artists. So I figured, since I have subscribers on my channel that clearly gravitate towards that same style of music, which I make as well, I could pass along some of this large amount of what some might consider to be useless knowledge to some people that actually care about it. So today I'm gonna go over 5 super underrated gent releases. Now I wanna give a quick disclaimer here. Most of the artists that I'm talking about today are very underground, meaning you may not have heard of them. If you have, that's great and I'm impressed. However, there is one artist that I'm gonna talk about today who you probably have heard of before, and many people probably would not consider this particular band to be underrated per se because they're signed to a record label and have a really big following. However, I'm specifically talking about one of their releases, which in particular I feel is very underrated and deserves a lot more recognition than it's ever received. So I just wanted to say that because I know there's gonna be some commenter that might be like, hey man, why are you hating on my favorite band? Like, listen, I'm absolutely not hating on any of these artists. Quite the contrary, I'm saying they're underrated. That's a compliment. I'm saying that I think they deserve more recognition, and more specifically, this one release, which I think you'll agree with me is pretty underrated. So that being said, that out of the way, let's get into this list. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna be going over 5 different releases today. They're in no particular order, so I'm not listing them in the order of my favorite to my least favorite. These are all just in random order. I did not put any thought into the order. This is not based on which artist is my favorite or anything like that. The first release I wanna talk about today is from a band called Estradus. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm gonna put it up on the screen right here in a moment. And the EP is called Solipsis. This was a 5-track EP this band put out back in 2013. I remember finding out about it right when it was released because I was always on Bandcamp and YouTube looking for the newest gent releases every day pretty much. It's an instrumental release, so for those of you that are a fan of the instrumental stuff, like my music or other instrumental artists, if you gravitate a little bit away from the vocals, you may really enjoy this one. Everything about this EP just screams gent. They really embodied that early 2010s, like 2011 to 2013 gent sound that was really, really prevalent. They just had great tight guitar playing, melodic leads and solos, all of those ambient textures and layers that we love to hear in that kind of music. Out of all, I mean, this was just one of those releases that I felt like deserved so much more recognition. So yeah, definitely think this one is super underrated, especially for its time. I highly encourage you to go check these guys out, and this EP in particular. My favorite song off of this EP is called Spectrum. It's the first track. So yeah, definitely go check out Solipsis by Estradus. The next release I want to talk about today is from a band called Fall in Archaea. And again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I might be butchering part of it, but let's go with it. The release is called Aura Magenta. This was an album they put out back in 2013, the same year as the last release I talked about. It's a good year for gent, apparently. This release is just another one of those ones where I listened to it and I can't believe that this band did not get 10 or 20 times a larger following than they had. They have a really nice combination of both like clean singing and screaming vocals. I'm not sure if they have 2 vocalists or if it's the same person that does both, but either way, all the vocals are performed extremely well. The instruments are performed extremely well. All the guitar playing is insane. The songwriting is insane. Guitar solos, insane. I'm getting a little bit redundant, but my point is check out this release if you haven't heard of it. I think you'll agree with me. How did this band not get bigger? I discovered it like years after they broke up. I found it, and that's always one of the most disappointing things for me, is when I find a great album and then later find out that the band doesn't even exist anymore. So anyway, if any of those guys from that band are watching somehow, huge shout out to y'all. That's one of my favorite albums. And my favorite song off of this album is called Motive. Alright, so next up, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I was going to be talking about a band who is pretty big, has a following, is signed to a record label, all that good stuff. However, I'm talking about a specific release which I believe is very underrated. So that band is Monuments, and that release is their 2010 EP, We Are the Foundation. This EP, again, I'm talking about underrated releases here, and man, I feel like this EP has almost been like forgotten at this point. I don't really hear anyone talking about it. And of course, Monuments is still going strong today. They've released several full-length albums, which I'm a fan of all of their material. I'm a huge Monuments fan. So I'm not trying to say like I'm stuck in the old days and I need old Monuments back, but this EP was really, really special for me in particular. Again, this was in that early 2010s time period, and these guys were doing it in a whole different style. Their vocals were very, very unique, with two different vocalists who had very different styles. This early Monuments material was just really, really special for me. These 3 songs, it's only a 3-song EP, but it doesn't need to be any more than that. It's quality over quantity, 100%. These guys were just doing it, in my opinion, in ways that were very, very ahead of their time, and I still listen to this EP all the time. So if you're a Monuments fan and you haven't heard the 2010 EP, We Are the Foundation, highly recommend it. Please go listen to this EP. It's not on like Spotify or iTunes or anything like that. You can find it on YouTube, and I'm gonna put a link to it in the description, as well as all the releases that I'm talking about today. So check the description if you want to listen to all the bands that I'm talking about here. And my favorite song off of this EP is the original version of their song Admit Defeat, which was also on their album Gnosis, but that version had completely different vocals. So again, if you're a Monuments fan and you haven't heard this EP, or you haven't heard the original version of Admit Defeat, I highly recommend checking it out. Alright, the next release on my list is from a solo artist, a fellow solo project, just like myself. I always have a soft spot for other solo artists. And this artist goes by the name of Beyond Infinity, based out of Indonesia, I believe. I've been keeping up with their material for a few years now, probably since 2015 or 2016, something like that. But earlier this year, in 2020, they released this new album called Eden. And man, this album is so good. It is nuts. I was already a fan prior to the release of Eden. This was one of those releases where it just took my appreciation for this artist to a whole new level. I already loved their music, and this album just blew all the prior releases away. The songwriting is better than ever. The production is crisp and clean. All the performances are on point. All the guitar playing sounds amazing. So this was just one of those releases that I can't recommend highly enough. This is another instrumental artist. So again, if you're a fan of bands or artists without vocals, you may gravitate towards Beyond Infinity, and specifically the album Eden. My favorite song off of this album is called Swerve. So if you're gonna start somewhere, I recommend with that track. Alright, and last up, this is the last, but of course not least, release on my list today. This release is from back in 2014 from a band called Of Temples. I believe they're based out of Canada, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure if they're still around. They released this EP called The Decline back in 2014, and man, this is a beast of an EP. I've been listening to it since it came out. I remember finding these guys. I think I found them through YouTube or maybe Bandcamp. Again, that was where I was finding a lot of my music back in those days. This EP, hard hitting, it's heavy, but it's also extremely technical. So if you tend to gravitate towards more melodic or instrumental gent, you may not be as much of a fan of this one. But if you like really, really heavy technical breakdowns with shreddy leads and really, really heavy vocals, this might be the thing for you. So again, this is just one of those releases that I found back in 2014. It was one of those things where when I heard it, I almost expected these guys to be the next big gent band that was gonna blow up, because the EP was that good, it was that hard hitting. I was like, oh man, these guys are gonna take over. And then I never really heard too much from them after that. but I still listen to this EP all the time. So I definitely highly recommend you check out The Decline by Of Temples. My favorite song on this release was called Survive. So that's gonna wrap me up for today's video. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch if you're here. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna be doing more videos like this. If you enjoy this video and you might want to see me turn it into a series or make a part 2 where I talk about 5 more underrated Gent releases, I could make probably 20 or 25 of these videos with the amount of underground artists I've found over the years. So please let me know if you want to see a part 2. I'd be happy to make one if people are interested. Either way, please subscribe to my channel if you like what you saw today. I have new music coming out as well soon, so again, if you're a fan of the type of music I was speaking about in today's video, you may enjoy my music as well, and I invite you to check it out. Links to that on all platforms is down in the description to the video. And with that, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video, and I hope you have a great day.